All right.
So after you finished high school, you were looking at post-secondary educational opportunities. Um, how was it you decided to pursue just going out of having that dark space from your teenage years and really hitting into those post-secondary choices?
Yeah. So that was again a really challenging time because I had really struggled between, right after 14, 15, right around the time that my brother passed away. So my grades weren't the best. My parents, they are both, my mother has a second grade education in Mexico. So she's always she's amazing. She's my hero. She's learned English and has learned to, she's right now, my father passed away, so she lives independently. I'm so proud of how far she's come and the things that challenges she's overcome in her own life. But my father also only had a sixth grade education. And so it was very hard for them to support me or to know how to support me with wanting to go to college and wanting, to explore the idea of going to college. And I knew I wouldn't be able to go to a university because of my grades. So I had, again, teachers who helped guide me. My PE teacher never gave up on me. And, they helped guide me towards community college. And so I ended up going to a community college for a couple of years and then transferring to Occidental College, and ended up being able to graduate in 4 years, just like everybody else, with a lot of hard work and, summer school and all of that. But I was really determined. My father always, and my mother, they always would encourage myself and the three of my other two siblings, my two brothers, that education was the way out. Education was the way for us to have a better life than what they had had. And that was a constant theme that we heard always growing up. And so even though they didn't know how to get us there, I'm so glad that I had teachers, and, you know, other people that were able to help guide me in that direction. Because I don't think I would have, I don't think I'd be where I am today were it not for those individuals.
Mhm. And let's kind of talk a little bit about the work that you're doing. First of all, the design and implementation that you do with district-wide staff through the Core Collaborative. You say you do work in every state, and just recently at the beginning of the school year, you've done some work. So tell me about that.
Yes. So I work with schools and districts all across the country. The main focus of my work is multilingual learners, and I also work with special ed departments. Most recently, I was working with a world languages department at the high school level, and and really the focus of that work, and I've been thinking a lot about this in preparing for my discussion and our talk today, is this idea of clarity. And that's where the book really goes with the Amplifying Learner Voice through culturally sustaining and responsive formative assessment. It's the idea of, do our students have clarity about what they're learning? Do they have clarity about how to demonstrate proficiency with what they're learning? And then that all starts with, do we have clarity with what we're expecting them to do? And that idea of clarity around language acquisition, I think, is a big challenge for us, for our multilingual learners. By the time they get to middle school or high school, many of them don't even realize that they are multilingual learners. They don't know what that
Mhm.
label means. They don't know. All they know is they lose, an opportunity for an elective, and they have to take ELD. And
Yeah.
so bringing English learners in to the equation and letting them see this is where you are, and giving them that clarity. Here's where you are in listening, here's where you are in speaking, reading, and writing, and here's what you need to do to get to the next step. And so that idea of clarity, I think, around language acquisition is so important, so hugely important. I just don't, I don't see a lot of that happening. And I'm hoping that through the work that we do, that more teachers and more school systems will start to bring their multilingual learners into that process, and so that they partner with us, so that they're engaged, right? That's the big thing I hear everywhere I go post-COVID, is engagement. They're not engaged. They're tuned out. They're, it's such a challenge to get them to do anything. So, what better way to get students engaged than to partner with them and actually have them know where they are and what their next steps need to be.
Yeah, and I think it's that effort at the school level, having also the personnel in place to be able to go through, like a homeroom teacher or the ELD teachers, or some districts have teacher leaders or coaches who can actually go through students' access scores with them, talk to them about where they are right after the scores come out, right? And have them like really understand kind of what the celebrations are and what they need to do to move forward and exit the program, because that's what we want kids to not have to be kind of with that label forever, right?
Right. And so many of them, it's like, they get to that one level 3 or whatever that level is, and then they just stay, right? And then they go through 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, and they just kind of languish, right, in the program. And so how do we get them past that? Yeah, I hear you. Yeah.
So I mentioned in your bio that you have written a contributing chapter in Amplify Learner Voice through culturally responsive assessment. So talk to me a little bit about some of the assessment tools that you talk about in this chapter.
So one of the things that is really nice about the way that we set up the book is I was able to kind of go through and think about all of the chapters collectively, and then think about them through the perspective of the multilingual learner. And so, giving teachers tools like, how do we take those, for example, if you're a WIDA state and your ELD standards are the WIDA standards for your multilingual learners, and how do we take those can-do descriptors, how do we take the standards, whatever state you're in, and turn them into success criteria that's understandable and that's clear to students, so that they can use that success criteria to do some self and peer assessment. And so that's a lot of the focus of the tools that I've added into the book and contributed to the book, have been tools for teachers to, see models, read about different scenarios and actual, students that I've worked with, or teachers that I've worked with, and how to guide them through that process of, how do we take this content, this unit, this unit 1, here's my learning intention for unit 1. How do I take that learning intention and break it down into, understandable and clear success criteria for my multilingual learners, so that they can measure their own success, so that they can track their own growth and their own success. And the positives that we see from that are just, amazing. We see kids who were previously disengaged engage, and that's because all of a sudden school isn't something that's being done to me. It's something that I'm doing with my teacher and with my peers, and I'm part of that process. So that ownership piece is probably for me the most important contribution that I make to the book in terms of multilingual learners.
Also, I wondered about some of the types of assessment, like project-based learning, and kind of giving kids a choice on how they're going to demonstrate their learning.
Yes. Yes, yes. So a lot of what we explore in the book are different opportunities and different ways
Mhm.
for students to we sometimes get so fixated on, here's my unit and here's the assessment, and this is how they're going to show that they've demonstrated mastery. But what about the idea of giving students options? What about the idea of saying, here's 3 different ways you can show whether you've mastered this content or not, and go with more of that project-based learning model where kids can kind of be the authors of, I want to show my learning this way, and then here's the criteria, and really getting them deeply engaged in that process. And then along the way, making sure that there's points along the way so that they're meeting with a peer and they're meeting with their teacher to get feedback so that they can make any kinds of edits or revisions along the way, so that by the time they get to the point where they're ready to submit something, it's they feel proud of it. They feel a sense of, I'm where I need to be. And then again, there's that, this always takes me to down that grading path. And
Mhm.
even if they happen to submit something and they realize there's something that can be fixed, why not give students the opportunity to make revisions and to resubmit work until they feel like this is exactly where what I was aiming for, and where I want it to be, and this is where I'm proud of submitting this work. Always gets me thinking about grading, especially when it comes to multilingual learners.
Yeah, we definitely want to give them a sense of confidence, right? And honor what their background knowledge. I think that's a big piece. Like, they have varying levels of education coming in, or, their country could have had different modalities of teaching and focus on different things. But I think, like, really celebrate what they know and the things that they solidly have in place, right? They could be
Yes.
very much more advanced in math or science, for example. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And I think that, that's one of the things with multilingual learners, that, sometimes, and this is something that I was guilty of
Mhm.
as a new teacher working with multilingual learners, is, kind of that assumption that, they're a level 1 in writing or in reading. So that, and that means they're low, but that doesn't mean they're low. It just means their ability to write and read in
Mhm.
English is low,
Yeah.
or is at the beginning level. And so I think sometimes, understanding and recognizing the fact that this student brings so much with them. They're not
Mhm.
a blank slate. They have skills. And I often say to teachers, it's as if someone picked you up and dropped you in Russia tomorrow. And if you're not fluent in Russian, that doesn't mean that you know nothing. It doesn't mean that, all of your knowledge just leaves your head. You still know everything that you know. You're still the knowledgeable person that you are. You just can't communicate that in Russian. So that's where our students are, right? They have all of this knowledge and all of this brilliance, but they may not be able to communicate it to us in English in the way that we want them to. So how can I find a way to allow them to show me what they know in a different way, right? If you can't
Mhm.
do it in the second language, can you do it in your primary language? Can you, build a model for me?
Mhm.
What can you do to show me with the limited language that you have, everything that's in your head, or as much
Mhm.
of what's in your head as possible?
Yeah, and I think they sometimes do come from that space of really being shy because they don't know English very well.
Yeah.
But, like, if we can really say, hey, if you want to try to use a translation device or something, and focus on what you do know, like you said, um, you can show us, like, your expertise. So yeah, I think that's
Right.
something teachers really need to focus on as well. I did want to talk to you about the book Reach and Teach ELLs and Common Informative Assessments for ELLs.
Yes.
You told me in the pre-chat you were approached at ASCD
Yes.
about writing that. So tell me a little
Yes.
bit.
Yeah, so that was so exciting for me as a teacher. I had started doing professional development in my own district, and then started kind of applying to present at national conferences, and it was a pretty awesome experience. I was doing a session on strategies for English learners, and specifically in math.
Mhm.
And how to engage English learners, because we always talk about, math is a universal language. And yes, to some extent it is, but there's also a lot of language involved in math. And so how do we make that language accessible to our students? So I'm doing this session, and I was approached by someone from ASCD who was, in the audience, and asked me, would you be interested in writing a book about this topic? And then it kind of snowballed from there. It kind of got me thinking, like, oh wow, like, maybe I could do this. Maybe I could write a book. And I was approached by someone from Jazzy Bass. Same thing, would you be willing to write a book on this topic? And so that was kind of my first writing experience, and it resulted in the How to Reach and Teach English Language Learners, which is really a collection of just at that just knowledge about the population, and the changing population, the changing demographic, and how it's not a monolith, right? How we always talk about that. It's a very diverse population. And then what do we do if we have them in our classrooms? What are some strategies we can use in listening, speaking, reading, and writing? So I approached it from the domains of language, and activating those domains of language, and really encouraging teachers to, where whatever your core content is, make sure that in every day, every content area, I'm asking my multilingual learners to listen, speak, read, and write every single day.
Mhm.
And so that was really the foundation of the book. When I finished that book, got me thinking about, well, you don't really know what strategy to go with until you know where your multilingual learners are. So the first step has to be assessment. And so then that got me thinking about the common formative assessments, and also common formative assessments in the content areas, and how to differentiate those, so that if I have a multilingual learner in my class who is reading and writing at a level 1 or 2, how do I get them to be able to demonstrate their learning to me in math?
Mhm.
And then it got me also, then I approached that book from 2 perspectives: assessing the content itself and how to differentiate our assessments, and also the perspective of assessing the language acquisition process itself, and where am I formatively in my language acquisition, because teachers only get that once a year access, or whatever your state English learner assessment happens to be, but you get that score once a year.
Yeah.
And so many decisions, students are grouped for ELD, all of these really important decisions are based off of that one score. And so how do we formatively assess language acquisition so that we can make adjustments along the way and say, okay, well, you're not a level 3 in writing anymore, you're a level 4 now, so we're going to boost you up to the next level in writing so that your language acquisition doesn't stall.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. How we can talk with the staff in terms of like students, and use also a body of evidence.
Yes.
Like in my state, we use iReady for an example. Like
Yes.
you do the access in January, but is that really where they are in May or in August of the next school year? Use iReady, use their reading and writing that they're doing in some of their core content areas. So don't base everything on that one time a year snapshot, like you said, right? So very important.
So important.
I wanted to talk to you a little bit about some of your speaking engagements, if you have any upcoming engagements or any conferences that you tend to speak at yearly, and some of the sessions that you now really focus on during those conferences.
Yeah, so I have actually been doing working with county offices of education.
Mhm.
I've done that in Colorado. Actually, I've done in BOCES, the BOCES area. I've done annual a conference type sessions with them around English learners. And a lot of the topics that I cover, and a lot of the topics that school systems or county offices of education or state departments of education have asked me to focus on have been this idea of either engagement or that whole idea of student efficacy and efficacy around language learners and how how do we make sure that we are providing opportunities for students to experience success so that they keep coming back, right? So every day in my class, are they getting a little mastery moment? Are they getting a little taste of what it feels like to be successful? So no, I may not be proficient in the language yet, but did I jump over a hurdle today? And did I do it successfully so that that feeds my learning forward? And what I think, in my discussions with teachers and talking to administrators is a lot of times our English learners, we feel like maybe they become long-term English learners because maybe they don't have that sense of efficacy. And so how are we making sure that our language learners, our multilingual learners are getting an opportunity to build their efficacy and to have that little ignition, that little, light, that fire underneath them that keeps them moving forward and keeps them from giving up, because it's hard, right? Being an English learner, and especially some of these long-term ELs I think of who go through years and years of hearing you're not proficient yet, you're not proficient yet, right? It's just like, nope, you haven't reclassified, nope, you haven't reclassified. And so after a certain point in time, it seems natural for them to just be like, I give up. Right. And so how do we keep them from throwing in the towel? How do we keep them seeing their growth, watching themselves get better every single day so that they get that little sense of efficacy that keeps them coming back?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's just a lot of effort on the educators that work with the students, and celebrating the growth, celebrating, like you said, what students can move forward with, and any of the scores that are improvements, right, on any
Right.
of these benchmark assessments or writing samples. Like you said, student efficacy, I think across subject areas is really important.
It is. It really is.
I wanted to discuss the bulk of the work that the Core Collaborative does, and kind of how the Core Collaborative works in general with teachers and districts.
Yeah. So the Core Collaborative, just an amazing organization. It's led, it's a group of teachers. Actually, we're all educators. Some with administrative background, some with years of classroom background. In the classroom, and we basically, our kind of North Star is self-empowerment, student empowerment, right? Students being assessment capable learners and being real owners of their learning. And so it really is a collaborative effort, and we all, like, the Amplify Learner Voice was a collaborative effort. So many amazing co-authors. I mean, Connie Hamilton, Kara Vandis, Isaac Wells, Paul Bloomberg, our fearless leader at the Core Collaborative, Ingrid Twyman, the Vet Dukes. So just just an amazing panel of thought leaders. And Peer Power, which was the first book, was the same thing. It was a collection of authors, collaboratively working together, focused on this idea of assessment capable learners, of self-empowered learners, and how do we get our students, how do we hook them into the learning, and how do we keep them hooked into the learning? And really, that really boils down to where we started, which is clarity, right?
Yeah.
Students have absolute clarity about what they're learning and what the expectation is, and how they're supposed to demonstrate proficiency on the expectation. So, so we're all about really, student efficacy and self-empowerment, and having students have that sense of, when it comes to culturally responsive assessment, that sense of criticality, and knowing, being able to identify in their lives, hinge points and places where, this is something that maybe has happened to me, but how does that experience help me grow, and help me become a better learner, a better person? So self-reflection, right? All of those pieces that come together to make students feel empowered and feel like they're truly in control of their own learning and of their own lives, right? They are the authors of their lives. And I think, it sounds big. One of the things I was mentioning, that I was working with a world languages and special ed teachers last week, and I automatically, when we start talking about success criteria and clarity, and making sure that, we start from a point of clarity as a team of teachers. What do we expect our, Spanish 1 students to leave here with this year? What do we expect our Algebra 1 students, our kindergarten, readers, our, second grade writers? If we can have absolute clarity about what our expectations are, and we can come up with models of success, then we can share that with our students so that they have clarity about what the expectations are, right? So then it just becomes a matter of, how can we start with us being clear first? What do we want students to learn? What do we want them to know and be able to do? And then what are we going to, how do we break that down into very clear success criteria for them so that they can reach those goals? And so, the work with the Core Collaborative is about partnering with teachers, partnering with teams on how to do that, and not overwhelming ourselves. Because I think if there's one thing that we tend to do in education is, we hear a great idea and then we overwhelm ourselves. We're like, I could see the wheels turning in the minds of my world languages teachers and my SPED teachers. Whoa, that means I've got to write success criteria for everything. And where do I start? And it starts to just get out of control. And then before you know it, it's like, oh, I can't do that. Like, this is not something I can do. And so we almost give up on it before we even get started. And so my message is small steps, right?
Yeah.
Just start with one thing. So I had them think about their first unit of study. Think about unit 1 that you're going to launch into, in a few weeks. What is your big learning intention? And then what is your success criteria? Just break one down and then use that and see how your students respond. And if you get that positive response, then just like we're asking of the kids, we want those mastery moments to feed their learning forward. That's what I'm hoping for my teachers, right? Is that their experience and their success will feed our learning as teachers forward, so that if we try a strategy and we see a positive result from it, then it's like, okay, well, let's look at unit 2 now, and how can we use this in unit 2 and build those little small changes, I think, can result in big wins. But but we have to be willing to make those little small changes and not just talk about it. Because a lot of that happens in our field too. We talk a lot about all the things that we need to do,
Mhm.
but then it's that action, the action part that gets us every time.
Yeah, no, I hear it. And I like the part where you said, like, you don't have to like do everything at once. Take a small chunk, right? Take one unit at a time. I think at the beginning of the school year, a lot of teachers are overwhelmed and they have a lot of buckets and things to do. But I think as you meet with your department or, teams and PLCs throughout the year, take those things and make a plan for how you're going to implement it,
Right.
step by step, but also empower your students through in the process. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I'm
Yes.
hearing. Well, we've had a
Yes.
great conversation today about
Yes.
things that you've written about self-efficacy in our students and
Yes.
how to assess them, besides just the yearly test for
Mhm.
multilingual learners. Out of everything we talked about, what's one thing you'd like listeners to remember?
I think this is a good time to remember a couple of things. The title of your podcast, Out of the Trenches, really, and I've heard other guests make this reference, but gets me thinking about James Nottingham's learning pit, and the way that we respond when we're in that pit, I think is really important, and we have to have certain dispositions, like perseverance and to get ourselves out of that pit. And I know how, we look at that in terms of student learning, but I think we have to also look at ourselves as learners and view ourselves as teachers. We're also learners, right? And so being in that pit, and that's why I love the title of your podcast, because I think it gives us permission to admit, there are puzzles of practice that really just, have us sometimes at a loss for, I don't know what to do. We're grappling with this and this is tough. And that's okay. It's okay to be in the pit. It's okay to be in the trench. We're all going to find ourselves there. But find or let's come up with a plan, and let's think of one small thing or one small way, one small change I can make to start handling or dealing with this puzzle of practice and working my way out of it. I don't have to solve it all in one day. We don't have to figure it out all at once. It might take us all year. It might take us 3 to 5 years, right? This is a journey and this is a process. And so don't give up on yourself too quickly, and don't expect things to change overnight. Sometimes it's going to take time to see that growth and to see that progress. But again, pick something that you are really passionate about, and just try it, give it a try, and don't overwhelm yourself. We tend to overwhelm ourselves. Don't overwhelm yourself. Just start small, and those little small wins will lead to big gains. And I think that would be, if everyone could kind of start the year with that perspective, I think that would make for a really great year.
Yeah, I really think that's a great note to end on. Like you said, those small wins, right? But
Yes.
set goals and don't feel like you have to do it all at once. Well,
Right.
where can people connect with you and find you online?
Oh yeah, so I'm on the Core Collaborative's website. So if you go to thecorecollaborative.com, you can find more information about me and about the Core Collaborative. Our book, Amplify Learner Voice, is on Amazon, also available on our webpage. I am on Twitter, Rachel EL Author. Also, that's also my handle for Instagram. So yeah, I'm out there, Facebook. Just hit me up, and I'd be happy to help in any way that I can. Anyone who has questions or wants to learn more, I'm here.
Great. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the Out of the Trenches podcast today. Have a great
Thank
rest of
you,
your day.
Dana. Yes, you too.